damage to that building. And at the same time, Phil, you can confirm this with me now, I understand that there has actually been entry by some of the protesters into the bank.
Yeah, Frederica, that's right. I'm standing amid a crush of maybe 2,000 people, these protesters who gathered initially outside the Bank of England this morning. They had been penned in by police rather effectively, and they grew increasingly frustrated with that, surging against police lines. They eventually broke through them, and they've now moved up along an adjoining building, the Royal Bank of Scotland. The police have redeployed in full protective riot gear, and they're holding them in again. But now the crowd is increasingly turning to the Royal Bank of Scotland building. Several windows of that building have been broken. Some smoke bombs appear to have been thrown into the building, and we've seen protesters enter the building as well. But for the most part, the police are containing the crowd.
Okay, and Phil, if you could kind of describe for me, I mean, the protesters who are there, is anyone willing to say these are kind of the usual suspects who often make themselves present when it was, whether it was the G18 or whether it's now the G20, whether they travel the globe to make their voices heard, even perhaps during World Economic Summits as well?
That was certainly one of the police fears, that you get those sort of veteran protesters showing up here.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. We're all pinned in very tightly. Certainly the crowd is a young one. Probably fair to say that many of them are university or college students. But it is mixed. There is a mixed crowd here. Many of them are concealing their faces, are marching with red and black flags that designate them as anarchists, if you like. These are the groups that the police are particularly worried about, because they're the ones that have shown a willingness to get violent in the past. But there is a mix. There's a mix of people who are constantly pushing the police lines forward, which is just happening right now as we speak. But others are just simply standing by and watching.
Okay, and Phil, if you would please kind of elaborate on what is really the point here of the protesters. We know they have made it clear that they are expressing outrage of the global economic crisis, but what is to be accomplished by the great numbers, the crush of people, and if there's one or two points they're trying to make, what might they be?
Broadly speaking, they're all anti-capitalist, I guess, is probably the one thing they would agree on. There are many other groups here, though. Some are political in their intent, others are very much environmental protesters, but they all seem to be bonded along this line that capitalism is bad and is responsible for the mess and for the current economic crisis the world sees itself in. Frederica.
Okay, and we're looking at the images now that we continue to get here. We saw some of the protesters using signs to actually crush the windows. We saw people climbing in, and now we're seeing some people who are protesters, presumably, climbing out of those broken windows. Do you know anything more about the details of what they were met with once inside that building?
I'm standing only a few meters from that, and I can tell you that there are police officers in that building. We've seen them on the other side of some of the glass that hasn't been broken yet. We're not sure to what degree they confronted those people who climbed in. We've seen police intelligence officers taking photos of people right up against that glass line there. But certainly the police have formed a ring around part of that building. They are inside. It's unclear if there have been any direct arrests just yet as a result of that damage, though.
And Phil, we know in many parts of London during this G20, perhaps in anticipation of the protesters, there were a number of storefronts and businesses that vowed to be closed today. These banks, the Royal Bank of Scotland, was that among those businesses that wanted to be closed today?
Yes, certainly. This building does appear to be closed for business, as do most of the buildings sort of in the immediate vicinity of where I am. That is the Bank of England, which was always the centre point for this protest today. Strangely, though, that Royal Bank of Scotland building doesn't have its windows boarded up, as do many of the other buildings directly adjoining the Bank of England.
Yeah,
but certainly it appears that there are no workers inside today.
Yeah, I guess boarding up might have been a good idea for the Royal Bank of Scotland, because at least looking from this side of the exterior of the building, it's all glass, but now all shattered glass. Phil Black, thanks so much. Appreciate it. All right, President Obama has several